John Adams, one of the United States' founding fathers and the second president of the United States. However, there are some little known facts about the founding father that very few people know about. Hello everyone, welcome to Top 10 History, your hub for historical lists and amazing history facts. Today we're going to go over the top 10 amazing facts about John Adams. Make sure to watch until number 1 because it's one of the most amazing facts about the former Commander-in-Chief that may shock you. Before we begin, if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to the channel with notifications on because we release a new historical top 10 list every single day. Also make sure to smash that like button. Alright, let's just get right into the video. Number 10. He does not have any monuments in Washington, D.C. The Founding Fathers were a deeply remarkable and respected group of people in American history since they were the reason that American citizens today are able to enjoy life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. However, in the United States Capitol, there is not a single monument in the memory and honor of former President John Adams, which is particularly interesting since his predecessor, George Washington, and his successor, Thomas Jefferson, have multiple monuments to their name. The most famous being the colossal Washington Monument overlooking Capitol Hill and the Thomas Jefferson Memorial. In order to fix this lack of recognition, Congress authorized the Adams Memorial Foundation, which would grant the second president and sixth president, John Quincy Adams, a monument in the Capitol. However, this project is still ongoing as there are several logistics that are still being figured out, including fundraising, location, and construction agreements, leaving the poor second president no monument to this day. Number 9. He founded the American Academy for Arts and Sciences. There is no doubt in any historian's mind that John Adams was a highly educated man, being that he is an alum from the prestigious Harvard University. Adams always recognized the importance of education and wanted to ensure that it was a valued part of American society, so much so that he included the public support for science and the arts into the Massachusetts Constitution. In 1779, he founded and established the American Academy for Arts and Sciences, which to this day is a major resource for scholarships and financial aid for higher education and independent research. Some of its members in its first class include Benjamin Franklin and George Washington themselves. Today, there are more than 75 institutions that are affiliates of that academy in support of it. According to Tom Chapman's book, Gentlemen Scientists and Revolutionaries, Adams considered its founding to be his greatest achievement. Number 8. How he wanted the president to be addressed. Now, the United States was founded on the idea of freedom from an autocratic rule such as a monarchy. However, traditions and old habits of respect for the nation's leading figure stuck around in Adams' mind as there was debate on how to properly address the president at the time, George Washington. John Adams felt that the presidency should be treated as a grand supreme title, much like the grand title of a European monarch. He felt like the term president wasn't as glorious since any owner of a men's club or cricket club could have the title president. With this belief in mind, he suggested that the President of the United States should be addressed as His Highness or His Majesty the President. But to many Americans who lived under the reign of a monarchy and just had a revolution because they were so tired of living under a monarchy, these titles were not favored upon because they sounded too much like the President was a figure of royalty. Eventually, Congress settled on the quite simple title, President of the United States. Number 7. Adams and Jefferson died on the same day. Now, here's an interesting fact that might give birth to some spooky conspiracy theories. Thomas Jefferson and John Adams had a bit of a love-hate relationship during their political days. Being founding fathers who worked together during the Revolution, to two different presidents with opposing views, there was a mixture of friendship and tension between the two. But what the two didn't know is that they would both perish on the same exact day. And what is even spookier was that day was July 4th, 1826, exactly 50 years after the creation of the Declaration of Independence. On his deathbed, Adams supposedly said, "Thomas Jefferson survives." Little to his knowledge, his rival Thomas Jefferson was already dead, as he passed away at his home, Monticello, just 5 hours before Adams. Talk about a spooky coincidence. At the time Adams and Jefferson died, there was only one founding father left who signed the Declaration of Independence, and that was Charles Carroll. Number 6. The one mistake that cost him the election. Now, when someone doesn't get a result that they had hoped for, it's human nature to come up with some excuses, even if what you blame has very little or nothing to do with the end result. Well, in the election of 1800, John Adams was defeated by his rival, you guessed it, Thomas Jefferson. So what excuses did John Adams make for his defeat, you may be wondering? Well, in the years 1798 and 1799, Adams called for national days of, quote, solemn humiliation, fasting, and prayer. And this might have been incorrectly viewed as a method of promoting the Presbyterian Church, which John Adams was not even a member of. Now, Adams would later come to realize is that enforcing a policy based on religion is not something that the people of a country founded on the idea of religious freedom, separation from church and state, would be too fond about. Adams wrote in a letter, "The national fast, recommended by me, turned me out of office. Nothing is more dreaded than the national government meddling with religion." It might seem crazy to blame the entire result of the election on one misstep such as this one, but with how close the election was, being that he only would have needed an extra 250 votes coming from New York City, he might have seen a second term if he never mistakenly mixed church with state. Number 5, the worst campaign in history. Speaking of the campaign between John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, many historians would consider the election to be one of the worst in history. If you considered some of the most recent presidential elections to be bad in terms of name-calling and mudslinging, just you wait. Now, as previously mentioned, Adams and Jefferson were bitter rivals. They've grown close since they worked together during the Revolution as well as together in the White House, with Jefferson serving as Adams' vice president, which may have been a mistake since they were in two different political parties. Federalist John Adams believed in a strong federal government, while Democratic Republican Thomas Jefferson was more focused on states' rights. However, this election went much farther than just disagreeing on policy. They started to attack each other on a personal level. Jefferson bought propaganda that described Adams as a, quote, hideous, hermaphroditical character, and went as far as claiming that Adams smuggled prostitutes and plotted to marry King George III's daughter and turn the United States into a monarchy. Rumors against Jefferson claimed that he was a French radical who was out to attack Christianity in the nation in reference to France's recent attack on the Catholic Church. Describing the campaign, Adams claimed it had produced enough toxicity to ruin and corrupt the minds and morals of the best people in the world. Number 4, he was the first president to live in the White House. Living in the White House is an honor that most presidents in the US get to enjoy. Having all of your meals prepared for you, the finest service, and a quite luxurious place to live is the dream of most American politicians. However, during the earliest days of the country, the White House was still under construction, as was the rest of Washington, D.C. The first president of the United States, George Washington, didn't even live in the White House at all. However, for most of John Adams' presidency, he didn't live in the White House either, as it was still under construction. Instead, he lived in Tunnicliff City Hall, a far less gorgeous living space for the President of the United States. John Adams finally moved to the White House on November 1st of 1800, although it wasn't the most luxurious day since the house was full of paint fumes and had the foul smell of wet plaster. Adams then lost the presidential election of 1800 and had to vacate the White House a few months later. He only got to live in the newly constructed White House for less than 4 months. Number 3, he wrote the oldest constitution still in use. Constitutions are what lay down the law and values of the land. However, they sometimes change due to regime changes, adapting ideologies, and other changes of value and policy. However, there are some constitutions that are incredibly durable, meaning they are still the law of the land centuries after they were penned. So you might be wondering, which constitution is the oldest constitution in the world that is still being used to this day? Well, that would be the Massachusetts Constitution, which was drafted by none other than John Adams himself. And the Massachusetts Constitution served as a model for the larger federal United States Constitution, along with its Declaration of Rights, which would later come to be known as the famous Bill of Rights. If it weren't for John Adams, the official Constitution of the United States wouldn't be the incredible, significant document that it is today. Number 2, he wrote thousands of letters. Speaking of writing, John Adams did not only write incredibly important and significant documents such as the Massachusetts Constitution. During his life, he also wrote a very large amount of letters to friends and family. Because he had a huge role as a founding father to the United States, as well as other political roles in his life, he was often away from his family. To his wife alone, he wrote over 1,100 letters to Abigail and did everything in his power to stay connected with his lover. Most of these letters survive to this day and are preserved in national archives, some of which are on display at museums so you can read them for yourself, despite violating the privacy of the former president. Just imagine if your text messages to your significant other were put on full display in a museum. Number 1, he defended British soldiers in court. Now, for someone who is recognized as a founding father of the United States, you wouldn't expect someone with that title to be providing aid, let alone defending British soldiers. Although Adams opposed the British, like many others, he believed that the British taxes were unfair and needed to be fought against. He strongly believed in the rule of law. On March 5, 1770, British soldiers opened fire on a crowd of colonists, an infamous event that would be remembered forever in history as the Boston Massacre. Despite being an opponent of the British, Adams strongly believed that the 9 British soldiers who were accused deserved a fair trial. As a result, he got 7 of the 9 soldiers acquitted from their manslaughter charges. The other 2 were found guilty of manslaughter, but they received a relatively light punishment of getting branded on their thumbs rather than serving time in prison. For someone who was able to successfully defend most of the British soldiers who committed one of the worst tragedies in American history, you could say that he was one hell of a defense attorney. Did these facts shock you? Make sure that you subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss out on more amazing historical facts and much more. If you like this video, check out this next video on the top 10 amazing facts about Donald Trump. Alright, have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next video.